The luxurious ambience of the Manhattan restaurant enveloped Rebecca like a familiar embrace, the soft lighting casting a warm glow over the intricately set tables. Crystal chandeliers dangled elegantly from the ceiling, and the gentle hum of conversation mingled with the clinking of silverware. It was a scene of opulence, one that she had become accustomed to as a successful entrepreneur in her early 30s. Yet, as she sat at the head of the table, surrounded by her colleagues, an unsettling sense of dissatisfaction gnawed at her. "Rebecca, this deal could set us up for years," exclaimed Mark, a burly man with a booming voice, leaning forward eagerly. "The numbers are outstanding. We just need to finalize the terms." Rebecca forced a smile, nodding absently as she scanned the faces around her. They were animated, enthusiastic about the financial prospects that lay ahead, but she felt detached, as if she were watching a movie rather than participating in real life. Her gaze drifted to the window, where the bustling streets of New York City unfurled like a chaotic tapestry. The blurred figures of pedestrians moved with purpose, while taxis honked impatiently, and street vendors shouted their wares. "Rebecca," Mark's voice cut through her reverie, pulling her back to the meeting. "What do you think?" "Oh, yes, absolutely," she replied, her voice lacking genuine conviction. "The projections are impressive. We should move forward." As her colleagues erupted in excitement, Rebecca's heart sank. She was supposed to feel exhilarated, empowered by her success, yet all she could muster was a hollow sense of accomplishment. The wealth that surrounded her felt heavy, like a chain that weighed her down rather than a source of liberation. It wasn't the first time she had grappled with these feelings, but today they seemed more pronounced, a shadow lurking just beneath the surface of her otherwise polished exterior. "Let's celebrate," suggested Sarah, her ever-enthusiastic assistant. "We can toast to our success and the beginning of a new chapter." "Sure, why not?" Rebecca replied, her mind still wandering. She lifted her glass, the crystal glinting in the candlelight, and forced herself to look into the eyes of her colleagues. "To success and new beginnings." "To success," they echoed, raising their glasses in unison. As the clinking of glasses filled the air, Rebecca felt an ache in her chest, a reminder of the emptiness she often tried to ignore. What was the point of all this? She had built an empire, yet she felt disconnected from the world around her. The laughter of her colleagues seemed to fade into the background, and she was left alone with her thoughts, trapped in a gilded cage. Meanwhile, just steps away from the restaurant, Jack sat on the cold pavement, his back against the grimy wall of a nearby building. The cacophony of the city surrounded him, but he felt like a ghost, invisible to the bustling crowd that flowed past. He rummaged through a trash bin, searching for scraps to sustain him. His clothes were tattered, a patchwork of dirt and wear, and his unkempt hair framed a face etched with the struggles of survival. "Hey, buddy, keep moving," a passerby barked, shoving Jack's shoulder as he walked by. Jack didn't flinch. He had grown accustomed to the indifference of others. In this world of privilege, he was a mere shadow, an afterthought in a city that thrived on ambition and success. Jack glanced up at the towering buildings, their sleek designs a stark contrast to his ragged existence. He observed the people around him, their faces lit with purpose, their laughter ringing clear as they stepped into the world of luxury that felt so far removed from his own. He sighed, a heavy breath that carried the weight of his isolation. Today was like any other day, a struggle to find enough food to last him through the afternoon. As he dug deeper into the trash bin, his fingers grazed something cold and metallic. Pulling it out, he realized it was a half-eaten sandwich, its crust slightly dried but still edible. He wiped it on his pants and took a bite, the taste a bittersweet reminder of his reality. Surviving wasn't easy, but he had learned to make do with what life threw at him. Inside the restaurant, Rebecca was preparing to deliver a toast, her colleagues buzzing with excitement around her. She stood, feeling the weight of their expectations. A flicker of anxiety coursed through her. This was her moment to shine, to solidify her status as a leader. But as she opened her mouth to speak, darkness suddenly enveloped her vision. "Rebecca," Mark's voice echoed distantly as she felt her legs give way beneath her. The world spun, and she collapsed, the sound of her body hitting the floor drowned out by the gasps of her colleagues. Panic erupted around her, faces blurring into a chaotic tapestry of fear and concern. "Call 911, someone shouted, and the restaurant staff rushed to her side. But in that moment of chaos, a figure pushed through the crowd, a man whose clothes hung loosely off his frame. It was Jack, who had wandered inside, drawn by the commotion. He knelt beside her, instinctively checking for signs of life. "Is she breathing?" he asked, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. He felt an urgency surge within him, a primal instinct to help. "Please, someone help," a woman cried, but Jack's focus was solely on Rebecca. He placed his hand on her wrist, feeling for a pulse. It was faint but present. "Stay back," he instructed the gathering crowd, his voice firm. "Give her space." As he leaned closer, he could see the fear etched on her colleagues' faces. They had forgotten about the deal, the celebration. None of it mattered now. Jack's fingers moved swiftly, checking her vital signs. He had learned basic first aid from a community workshop, and in that moment, he was grateful for the knowledge. "Come on, Rebecca," he murmured under his breath, his heart racing as he worked to stabilize her. "You gotta wake up." Time seemed to stretch as he focused solely on her, blocking out the gasps and murmurs of the onlookers. Jack's hands trembled slightly, but he fought to keep his composure. The weight of the moment settled heavily on his shoulders. Yet he pushed through, determined to do everything he could to save her. "Jack!" someone from the crowd shouted, but he didn't turn to acknowledge the voice. All he could see was Rebecca's pale face, the way her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. "Help is on the way," he called out, though he wasn't sure if it was meant for her or for himself. The minutes felt like hours, the tension in the air palpable as the restaurant patrons held their breath, waiting for a miracle. In that extraordinary moment, the lives of two seemingly opposite individuals, Rebecca, the wealthy entrepreneur, and Jack, the homeless man, were about to intertwine in ways neither could have anticipated. Compassion, connection, and the unexpected consequences of a single moment were set into motion, forever altering the course of their lives. As Rebecca lay on the opulent marble floor of the restaurant, the sharp sounds of panic echoing around her faded into a distant hum. She felt a warm presence beside her, a strange contrast to the chaos swirling in her mind. Jack, though disheveled and worn, knelt beside her with a fierce determination in his eyes. "Stay with me, ma'am," he urged, his voice steady despite the tremors of uncertainty coursing through him. He leaned over Rebecca, who was now unconscious, and checked her pulse. It was weak but there. Drawing on the basic first aid techniques he had learned at a community workshop, he quickly assessed her condition. Okay. Just breathe," he murmured, his hands moving with surprising confidence. He gently tilted her head back to open her airway, placing 2 fingers on her neck to feel for a stronger pulse. "Come on, Rebecca. You can't leave us like this." Around them, the scene was chaotic. Guests scrambled to find their phones, and the restaurant manager frantically signaled for help. Jack could hear their gasps of shock and disbelief. He felt their eyes on him, a mix of fear and gratitude. It was a strange feeling, being seen for the first time in what felt like ages. "Someone call 911, a voice shouted, cutting through the noise. "I already did," another replied, panic edging their tone. Jack focused solely on Rebecca. "Just a little longer," he whispered, willing her to respond. He placed his hands on her shoulders, feeling the warmth of her skin, and began to talk to her as if she could hear him. "You're going to be all right. Just hang in there." Moments felt like hours before the blaring sirens pierced the air, signaling the arrival of the paramedics. Relief washed over Jack as he saw them rush through the restaurant doors, their presence a beacon of hope. The paramedics quickly took over, assessing Rebecca's condition with practiced efficiency. "What happened?" one of them asked, crouching beside Jack. "She fainted," Jack said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I think she just needed some air. I did what I could." The medic nodded, his expression a mix of gratitude and urgency. "You did good, man. We got her from here." As they lifted Rebecca onto a stretcher, Jack felt a strange sense of pride swell within him. He had done something good today, something that mattered. But as the paramedics wheeled her away, the bustling restaurant began to settle back into its usual rhythm, and Jack was left standing alone in the aftermath. The guests who had once been frantic now watched him with a strange mixture of awe and suspicion. Some whispered among themselves, pointing in his direction. Jack could feel the weight of their stares, an unfamiliar attention that made his skin crawl. He shifted uncomfortably, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, feeling the rough fabric of his worn jeans. "Who was that guy?" someone asked, their voice tinged with disbelief. "Just a homeless man, I think," another replied, their tone dismissive. Jack's heart sank as he overheard their words, the flicker of hope he had felt moments ago extinguished by the sting of reality. A homeless man, that was all he would ever be in their eyes. The crowd began to disperse, and Jack felt the chill of loneliness creeping back in, wrapping around him like a familiar blanket. "Hey," a voice called out, breaking through his thoughts. A woman, elegantly dressed with a concerned look on her face, approached him. "Are you okay?" Jack met her gaze, confusion evident in his eyes. "I'm fine," he said, though he felt anything but. "You really helped her," she said, a note of admiration in her voice. "You were incredible." He shrugged, trying to brush off her praise. "Just did what I could. She needed help." "You're a hero," she insisted, her sincerity palpable. "You saved her life." The word hero echoed in his mind, an alien concept that felt foreign and uncomfortable. "I'm just a guy who happened to be in the right place at the right time," he replied, his voice heavy with self-doubt. The woman smiled softly. "Still, that's more than most people would do. Don't downplay it." Before he could respond, she turned to leave, melting back into the crowd. Jack stood there, the weight of her words hanging in the air. He felt a flicker of something. Was it hope? But it quickly faded as he remembered where he belonged. As the last of the guests trickled out of the restaurant, Jack found himself alone on the street, the bustling city continuing on around him, oblivious to the storm of emotions swirling within him. He took a deep breath, the cool air filling his lungs as he watched the paramedics drive away with Rebecca. "Guess that's it," he muttered to himself, shoving his hands deeper into his pockets. Back to reality. Hours passed, and the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the city streets. As the neon lights flickered to life, Jack wandered aimlessly, his thoughts a chaotic jumble. He had saved a life today, but what did that mean for him? Did it change anything? The world around him continued to move at a dizzying pace, but Jack felt stuck, trapped in a cycle of survival that seemed impossible to escape. He found a bench in a nearby park, the familiar creak of the old wood beckoning him to sit. Jack plopped down, exhaustion weighing heavily on him. He stared up at the night sky, the stars twinkling like distant dreams. "What's the point?" he whispered to himself, the question hanging in the cool night air. "What's the point of saving someone when I can't even save myself?" Just then, a memory flared to life, a time when he had a family, a job, a future. Before everything had crumbled beneath him, the weight of regret washed over him, a familiar ache that gnawed at his insides. But then, Rebecca's face flashed in his mind, her expression of fear turning to gratitude. Maybe he had done something good today. Maybe, just maybe, it mattered. As the hours ticked by, Jack tried to shake the feeling of uncertainty. He pulled out a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket, the remnants of a flyer for a local shelter. He had been meaning to check it out, but something had always held him back. What if there's something better out there? He pondered aloud, his voice barely a whisper in the empty park. Meanwhile, in a sterile hospital room, Rebecca's eyes fluttered open, her heart racing. The sterile smell of antiseptic filled her senses as she slowly regained her bearings. She remembered the restaurant, the meeting, and then darkness. And Jack. Who was he? She murmured to herself, her voice hoarse. She could still feel the warmth of his hands on her shoulders, his urgent voice urging her to stay with him. He saved my life. Overwhelmed by gratitude, she felt a sudden jolt of determination. I have to find him, she whispered, her heart racing with a mix of urgency and hope. As she lay there, she envisioned Jack's face, the way he had looked at her with such fierce intent. He was a stranger, yet he had shown her more compassion in that moment than anyone else had in years. Rebecca felt a deep sense of connection, a pull to understand who he was and why he was in that restaurant at that exact moment. I won't let this be the end, she promised herself, the fire of determination igniting within her. I need to find him and thank him properly. The hospital room faded around her as her mind raced with possibilities. She would seek him out, not just to express her gratitude, but to connect with the man who had altered the course of her life in a matter of moments. And so, as the city continued to swirl around them, two lives forever altered by a single act of compassion, their paths were destined to intertwine once more, setting in motion a journey that neither could have anticipated. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over Central Park as Rebecca's assistant, Sarah, rifled through a series of maps and notes scattered across the conference table. Rebecca sat opposite her, her mind racing with thoughts of Jack, the homeless man who had saved her life. The hospital had been a whirlwind of emotions, and now, with each passing hour, she felt a growing urgency to find him. "Sarah, are you sure he's often around here?" Rebecca asked, tapping her fingers on the polished surface of the table. Her heart was pounding with a mix of hope and anxiety. The image of Jack's weathered face lingered in her mind, a reminder of the deep connection they had forged in that fleeting moment. "Most of the reports I found say he sleeps near the park," Sarah replied, her brow furrowed in concentration. "There are a few regulars who might know him. If we can get some flyers up, we might find someone who can point us in the right direction." Rebecca nodded, feeling a surge of determination. "Let's do it. I want to help him, Sarah. He deserves more than what life has dealt him." As they began crafting a flyer, Rebecca's thoughts drifted back to Jack. She recalled the way he had rushed to her side, asserting a sense of calm in the chaos. He had saved her, yes, but there was something more profound about their meeting, an unspoken understanding that resonated deep within her. She couldn't shake the feeling that their lives were meant to intersect. Meanwhile, Jack sat alone on a weathered bench in Central Park, the familiar sounds of the city merging into a symphony of life surrounding him. He watched the people walk by, their faces a blur of purpose and ambition, and for a moment, he felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in years: purpose. The adrenaline from the incident at the restaurant still coursed through his veins, and he couldn't help but smile at the thought of Rebecca. The way she had looked, the gratitude in her eyes. It was a glimpse of something he thought he had lost forever. "Hey, buddy, you got any spare change?" A voice interrupted his thoughts. Jack turned to see a fellow homeless man, Mike, approaching him with an outstretched hand. "Not today, Mike," Jack replied, shaking his head. "I'm just thinking." "Thinking? About what?" "The next meal." Mike chuckled, plopping down on the bench beside him. "You know you're wasting your time. No one's coming to save you out here." Jack frowned, turning his gaze back to the park. "I don't know, man. Something feels different. I help someone, and maybe I can change my life." "Yeah, right," Mike scoffed, rolling his eyes. "You think a single act of kindness is going to get you off these streets? You need a plan, not daydreams." "Maybe," Jack admitted, his voice trailing off. "But I can't shake this feeling. That woman, she deserves to know I'm okay. You know? I just have to find her." As the day wore on, Rebecca and Sarah plastered flyers around the park, hoping someone would recognize Jack and give them a lead. Each passerby was met with a curious glance as they read the words: Asterisk, help us find the hero who saved a life. Reward offered for information. Asterisk, do you think this will work? Rebecca asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty as she watched people hurry past, oblivious to the flyer's content. It has to, Sarah replied, her optimism unwavering. People love a good story. If anyone knows him, they'll want to share it. Rebecca nodded, but doubt still gnawed at her. What if Jack didn't want to be found? What if he didn't want anything to do with her? The thought sent a shiver down her spine. She had to believe that their encounter had meant something to him too. Later that evening, as twilight enveloped the park, Jack overheard a group of young adults animatedly discussing the news. They were gathered around a picnic table, their laughter punctuating the serene ambience of the park. "Did you hear about the woman who collapsed at that fancy restaurant?" One of them said, a hint of excitement in their voice. "They say a homeless guy saved her life." Jack's heart raced as he strained to listen. The conversation continued, each word igniting a mixture of emotions within him. "Yeah, they're looking for him now. Apparently, she's offering a reward to find him." "I can't believe it." Another chimed in, their voice bubbling with enthusiasm. A knot tightened in Jack's stomach. "Reward? He had never wanted anything in return for his actions. He had just acted on instinct. But what did this woman want from him? Would she want to repay him with money or something else? The thought of facing her sent waves of anxiety crashing over him. What would you even do with it if you found him? A girl asked, her tone half joking. Buy a house? Get a job? Maybe he just wants to be recognized for once, the first voice responded. I mean, it's not every day a homeless guy saves a rich woman's life. Jack's mind raced as he grappled with the implications of their words. Recognition? That was a foreign concept in his world. He had spent years trying to blend into the background, to become invisible to avoid the judgment and pity that often followed him. The idea of being thrust into the spotlight terrified him, but also intrigued him. He took a deep breath, his resolve wavering. What if Rebecca wanted to thank him? What if she didn't see him as just a homeless man, but as someone who had made a difference? The thought was intoxicating, yet he felt the weight of his past pressing heavily on him. Are you okay, man? Mike's voice broke through his reverie. You look like you've seen a ghost. Yeah, just listening, Jack mumbled, his thoughts still swirling. I think I might be in over my head. Don't let them get to you, Mike said, his tone suddenly serious. You did something good, but remember, they don't know you. They see a story, not a person. You need to be careful. Jack nodded, but deep down, a part of him yearned for the chance to meet Rebecca again. If she was looking for him, maybe it was a sign, a chance to reclaim his life and reshape his identity. But the fear of rejection loomed large in his mind. As he sat there, lost in contemplation, he felt an unfamiliar flicker of hope intertwining with his anxiety. What if facing Rebecca could change everything? What if, for once, he could step out of the shadows and embrace the light? The choice lay before him, and as the last rays of daylight faded into darkness, he knew he had to confront his fears. After all, it was the least he could do for the woman who had unknowingly ignited a spark within him. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden glow over Central Park as Rebecca made her way through the bustling paths, her heart pounding with anticipation. She had finally set out to find Jack, the man whose selfless act had saved her life. It felt surreal that just days ago, she had been at the pinnacle of her career, surrounded by luxury and status, and now here she was, seeking a connection with someone who lived on the streets. Rebecca scanned the park, her sharp eyes searching for the familiar figure she had only seen in fleeting moments, dirt-streaked and worn, yet undeniably heroic. After a few minutes of searching, she spotted him, Jack, sitting on a weathered bench, his hair tousled by the gentle breeze, a distant look in his eyes. Taking a deep breath to steady her nerves, she approached him slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. Jack, she called softly, her voice trembling slightly. He looked up, his expression shifting from surprise to wariness. Yeah? What do you want? His tone was defensive, but there was a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. I'm Rebecca, she said, extending her hand as if to bridge the gap between their worlds. The woman you saved at the restaurant. Jack's brows furrowed, and he shifted uncomfortably on the bench. All right, you're the one who fainted. He hesitated, his gaze dropping to the ground. I didn't do anything special. Just reacted, you know? Rebecca sat down beside him, her heart swelling with gratitude. You did something amazing. You saved my life, Jack. I owe you everything. He shrugged, the weight of her gratitude seeming to both touch and overwhelm him. Just doing what anyone would have done, I guess. Rebecca could see the hesitance in his eyes, the way he pulled back from the warmth of her words. I don't think just anyone would have acted the way you did. You stayed calm, and you knew what to do. That's not something everyone can claim. Jack rubbed the back of his neck, his discomfort palpable. Yeah, well, I've had my share of hard knocks. Learned a few things along the way. Can you tell me about it? She asked, her voice gentle. He hesitated for a moment, glancing away as if searching for the right words. It's not a pretty story. Nobody wants to hear about a guy who messed up his life. I want to hear it. I want to understand, Rebecca insisted, her voice resolute. Jack took a deep breath, his defenses lowering slightly. Fine. I used to have a job, a decent one. I worked in construction, and I thought I was doing all right. But then, his voice trailed off, and Rebecca could see the pain etched on his face. But then, she prompted gently. But then I got hurt on the job, and everything fell apart. I couldn't work for months. Bills piled up, and I lost my apartment. I tried to find another job, but with my injury, no one wanted to hire me. It spiraled down from there. He paused, looking at her with a mix of vulnerability and defiance. You know how it is. One minute you're on your feet, and the next, you're on the street. Rebecca nodded, feeling the weight of his words. I can't imagine how hard that must have been. I'm so sorry, Jack. He shrugged again, a gesture that seemed to dismiss her sympathy. It is what it is. I made my choices, and now I'm stuck with them. Maybe not forever, she said, her voice laced with hope. You deserve a second chance. Jack turned to look at her, skepticism clouding his features. A second chance? For what? To get back to being a nobody in a suit? That's not me. But what if it could be? Rebecca pressed, a spark of determination igniting within her. What if I could help you? I run a company, and I need good people. I could offer you a job. Jack's eyes widened in disbelief. You're serious? Absolutely, she replied. You have skills. You're resourceful, and you've shown that you can handle pressure. You've faced challenges that most people would crumble under. He shook his head, a mixture of hope and fear wrestling within him. I don't know, Rebecca. I haven't worked in so long. What if I mess up? What if I don't fit in? Rebecca leaned closer, her expression earnest. Everyone has to start somewhere. You've already shown that you can rise to the occasion. Just look at what you did for me. You can do this, Jack. He sat in silence, the weight of her offer hanging between them. The thought of stepping back into the world of work felt both exhilarating and terrifying. What would I even do? He finally asked. We have different roles in our company. We could find something that suits you. You wouldn't be thrown into the deep end. I'll be there to help you every step of the way, she assured him. I don't know how to say no to you, he admitted, the corner of his mouth twitching into a small smile despite his apprehension. But I'm scared. I get that, she replied, her voice softening. But sometimes, the scariest things can lead to the most beautiful changes in our lives. Just think about it, okay? Jack nodded slowly, the prospect of a new beginning swirling in his mind like a distant dream. He looked up at her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. Why do you want to help me? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Because you're worth it, Rebecca replied without hesitation. You've shown me what it means to be brave and selfless. I want to give you a chance to show the world who you really are. For a moment, they sat in silence, the sounds of the park around them fading into the background. Jack's heart raced as he contemplated her offer. Could he really step into a new life? Did he deserve that kind of chance? So, what do you say? Rebecca asked, breaking the silence. Will you think about it? Yeah, he said slowly, the word tasting foreign on his tongue. I'll think about it. Rebecca smiled, a genuine warmth radiating from her. That's all I ask. As they continued to talk, Rebecca listened intently to Jack's stories, learning about his childhood and the dreams he once had. Each word he spoke painted a picture of a man who had been through the fire and yet still held onto a flicker of hope. Do you have any dreams left? She asked, her curiosity piqued. Jack paused, contemplating her question. I used to want to be an architect. I love building things, creating, but that feels so far away now. Why not pursue it? She encouraged him. You could start small, maybe take some classes or volunteer with organizations that help build homes. You have the potential to make a difference. He looked at her, a spark igniting in his eyes. You really believe that? I do, she said firmly. And I want to help you get there in any way I can. Suddenly, the connection between them deepened, a shared understanding blossoming in the air. Jack saw in Rebecca not just a wealthy entrepreneur, but a kindred spirit who believed in the power of transformation. For the first time in a long time, he felt a shift within himself, a glimmer of possibility rising against the backdrop of his struggles. Okay, he said, his voice steadying with newfound resolve. I'll think about the job, and maybe, just maybe, I'll consider taking some classes. Rebecca beamed, her heart soaring with joy. That's the spirit, Jack. Remember, you're not alone in this. I'll be right here, cheering you on. As the sun dipped lower, casting a warm glow over their conversation, Jack realized that perhaps, just perhaps, his life could take a different turn. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, But for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of hope blooming in his chest, a hope that was intertwined with the unexpected friendship that had begun to take root between him and Rebecca. As Jack stepped into the sleek, glass-walled office of Rebecca's company, he felt a mix of exhilaration and anxiety. The polished floors reflected the bright lights overhead, and the hum of conversation filled the air. A stark contrast to the gritty streets he had known for so long, this place felt almost surreal. He tugged nervously at the collar of the button-up shirt Rebecca had insisted he wear, a stark change from his usual tattered clothes. "Remember," Rebecca had said during their last meeting, her voice warm and encouraging. "You belong here. Just be yourself." But as he stood there, surrounded by the hustle and bustle of corporate life, Jack wondered if he truly could fit in. "Hey, new guy," a voice called out, breaking through his thoughts. It was Sarah, Rebecca's assistant, waving him over with an encouraging smile. "Rebecca's waiting for you in the conference room. She's excited to introduce you to the team." Jack nodded, forcing a smile, and followed Sarah through the maze of desks and meeting rooms. He could feel the eyes of several employees on him, some curious, others skeptical. It was a strange sensation being scrutinized like this. He had lived most of his life feeling invisible, yet here, every movement felt amplified. As they entered the conference room, Jack's heart raced. Rebecca stood at the head of the long table, her confidence radiating as she addressed a group of employees. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet Jack," she said, her voice strong and clear. "He's joining us as our new project coordinator." The room fell silent for a moment before a round of polite applause broke out. Jack felt his cheeks flush as he stood there, awkwardly shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "Thank you," he managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. Rebecca motioned for him to join her at the front. "Jack has an incredible story, and I believe he will bring a fresh perspective to our team. I want you all to welcome him with open arms." As she spoke, Jack felt a swell of gratitude towards Rebecca. She was fighting for him in a way he had never experienced before. He stole a glance around the room, meeting a few eyes, but mostly he noticed the skeptical gaze of Mark, a senior colleague who had been particularly quiet. Jack couldn't shake the feeling that Mark was sizing him up, assessing him like a threat. After the meeting, Jack settled into his new role. He spent the next few days getting to know the ins and outs of the company, meeting with various teams, and learning about their ongoing projects. Rebecca was always nearby, guiding him through the complexities of corporate culture. Her mentorship made the transition easier, and slowly, Jack began to feel more comfortable. "Remember, Jack," she said one afternoon as they reviewed a project plan together, "it's okay to ask questions. We're all here to help each other." Jack nodded, gratitude swelling within him. "I'll try my best," he replied, still adjusting to the idea that he was not only welcome but valued. Yet, as the days turned into weeks, Jack began to notice the subtle hostility from Mark. It was in the way Mark would dismiss his ideas in meetings, often brushing them aside with a wave of his hand. "That's not how we do things here, Jack," he would say, smirking slightly. Jack felt the sting of those words, but he kept his head down, determined to prove himself. One afternoon, Jack overheard Mark speaking to another colleague in the break room. "Can you believe Rebecca hired that guy? He's a liability. He doesn't belong in this world." Jack's heart sank at the venom in Mark's words. Days later, during a crucial presentation to potential clients, Jack felt a knot of anxiety forming in his stomach. He had worked hard on this project, pouring himself into every detail. As he stood at the front of the room, he glanced at Rebecca, who was seated at the back, her encouraging smile giving him the strength to carry on. But as he began to present, he noticed Mark sitting in the corner, a smug expression on his face. Jack's voice wavered as he spoke, the weight of Mark's disapproval pressing down on him. "We believe this project will innovate our approach to market strategy," and suddenly, a loud crash interrupted him. Mark had dramatically knocked over a stack of papers, causing several people to jump. "Sorry, Jack. Didn't mean to distract you," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "But maybe you should stick to what you know best, like collecting cans." Jack felt the blood rush to his cheeks. Laughter erupted in the room, and for a moment, he was paralyzed. But then, he remembered Rebecca's words. He took a deep breath, grounding himself in the moment. Actually, Mark, Jack said, his voice steadying, I believe that everyone deserves a chance to grow, regardless of their past. The laughter faded, replaced by an uneasy silence. Jack continued, I may not have the same background as some of you, but I bring a different perspective that can benefit this company. I'm here to contribute, not just to take up space. Rebecca's eyes sparkled with pride as she watched Jack confront Mark. The tension in the room shifted. Even Mark looked taken aback. Let's keep this professional, Jack. Mark shot back, his voice tense. You're just a charity case, remember? Maybe, Jack replied, his heart pounding, but I'm also a person worthy of respect, and I'm more than my circumstances. He felt a surge of confidence as he spoke, realizing that he was no longer that invisible man on the street. He was part of something bigger now. Mark's face reddened with anger, but before he could respond, Rebecca stood up. That's enough, Mark. This is unacceptable behavior in our workplace. Jack is here to contribute and learn, just like everyone else. I expect you all to treat him with the respect he deserves. There was a moment of stunned silence before she continued. We're a team, and teamwork requires support and understanding. If anyone has a problem with that, we can discuss it outside this room. Her tone was firm, leaving no room for argument. The clients exchanged glances, impressed by Rebecca's defense of Jack. Mark's expression darkened, but he remained silent, knowing he had crossed a line. As the meeting concluded, Jack felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had stood up for himself, and Rebecca had backed him. They walked out of the conference room together, and Jack turned to her, gratitude shining in his eyes. Thank you for standing up for me. Rebecca smiled warmly. You did that all on your own, Jack. I'm proud of you for confronting him. You have a voice, and it matters. Jack nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. He might have come from a different world, but he was no longer an outsider. He was part of this team, and he was ready to embrace the challenges ahead, armed with the support of Rebecca and the strength he had found within himself. After Mark's dismissal, a wave of relief washed over the office. Jack felt the weight of his experiences lift just a little, as if the burdens he had carried for so long were beginning to ease. The team gathered in the conference room, their expressions a mix of surprise and admiration. They applauded Jack, acknowledging his integrity and standing up against unethical behavior. The energy in the room buzzed with excitement, and for the first time in a long while, Jack felt a sense of belonging. Jack, you really showed them what's right, Rebecca said, her voice warm and encouraging as she approached him. She stood beside him, her eyes sparkling with pride. You've proven that you belong here. Thanks, Rebecca, Jack replied, a genuine smile breaking across his face. He could hardly believe how far he had come in such a short time. The luxurious office, once a distant dream, felt strangely like home now. I just did what I thought was right. Exactly, she nodded, placing a hand on his shoulder. And that's what makes you an invaluable part of this team. As the applause continued, Jack's heart swelled with gratitude. He looked around at his colleagues, some of whom had once viewed him with skepticism, now offering smiles and nods of approval. It was a stark contrast to the loneliness he felt on the streets, a world where he was often overlooked and dismissed. Later that afternoon, they gathered for a celebratory lunch in a nearby cafe, a favorite spot of Rebecca's where they could unwind. The atmosphere was light, filled with laughter and chatter, and Jack found himself immersed in conversations he never thought he'd be part of. As they toasted to new beginnings, Jack felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. But just as life seemed to take a positive turn, Rebecca received a phone call that would send ripples through their newfound connection. She stepped outside the cafe to take the call, her expression shifting from lightheartedness to concern. Jack watched her, a knot of anxiety forming in his stomach, sensing that something was wrong. When she returned, her demeanor was a mix of confusion and urgency. Jack, I need to talk to you about something, she said, her voice steady but laced with tension. Is everything okay? He asked, his heart racing. He feared that something might have happened to her or the company. It's about my father, she began, her brow furrowing as she searched for the right words. He was involved in a charity years ago, one that your mother was also part of. Jack's expression shifted from worry to intrigue. What do you mean? My mother, he asked, his mind racing with possibilities. What charity? Rebecca took a deep breath, collecting her thoughts. It was a foundation that helped families facing financial difficulties. I just got off the phone with an old family friend who mentioned it. Your mother. She was a part of something significant, and it seems our paths may have crossed before. Significant how? Jack inquired, his curiosity piqued. Memories of his mother's stories about helping others rushed back to him, fragments of a past he had almost forgotten. She was known for her compassion and dedication. My father spoke highly of her. He said she once helped our family during a tough time when we were struggling to keep the business afloat, Rebecca explained, her eyes widening as if realizing the magnitude of her revelation. I think she may have played a role in my family's recovery. Jack could hardly process the information. The world felt smaller, the connection between them deepening in ways he never anticipated. Are you saying my mother helped your family? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Yes, Rebecca confirmed, her expression softening. It's incredible to think about how interconnected our lives have been. Your mother's kindness, her actions, they had a ripple effect that reached my family. Jack felt a surge of emotions. The weight of his past, the struggle, the loneliness, shifted as he realized that his mother's legacy of compassion was still alive in some form. I never knew, he murmured, overwhelmed. I always thought my mother's efforts went unnoticed. Rebecca stepped closer, her gaze empathetic. It's a powerful reminder that our actions, no matter how small, can have a lasting impact. You embody that same spirit of kindness, Jack. It's why you saved my life. He looked into her eyes, seeing the understanding and compassion reflected back at him. For the first time, he felt a sense of purpose that transcended his previous existence. I never thought I would find something meaningful again, he admitted, his voice shaky. I was just trying to survive. We're all just trying to survive in our own ways, Rebecca replied softly, her hand finding his. But together, we can do more than that. We can thrive, we can help others just like our mothers did. In that moment, they forged a bond that transcended their individual struggles. They were not just a wealthy entrepreneur and a formerly homeless man. They were two souls intertwined by the threads of compassion, each with a unique story that brought them to this point. As they sat back down at the cafe table, the laughter and chatter of their colleagues faded into the background. Jack felt lighter, as though a burden had been lifted, and he knew this was just the beginning. The revelation of their shared history brought a renewed sense of hope, not only for himself, but for the legacy he wished to create. Let's make a difference together, Jack said, determination flooding his voice. We can honor our mothers by helping those who need it most. Rebecca smiled, her eyes shining with inspiration. I'd love that. Let's start a program, something that gives back to the community. We can use our experiences to uplift others. Absolutely, Jack agreed, excitement coursing through him. They began to brainstorm ideas, their conversation flowing seamlessly as they envisioned a future filled with compassion and purpose. In that bustling cafe, amidst the laughter and chatter of their colleagues, Jack and Rebecca realized that their lives had intersected for a reason. They were not just two individuals from different worlds. They were now partners in a mission to spread kindness, to uplift those who felt invisible, just as they had once been. As they clinked their glasses together in a toast to new beginnings, Jack felt a warmth in his heart that he hadn't experienced in years. He was no longer just a survivor of his circumstances. He was a catalyst for change, and with Rebecca by his side, he knew they could make a difference that echoed far beyond their own stories.